All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I'm so happy to have Nicholas Humphrey back with us, meteorologist, PhD, almost there in disaster
Almost.
management. Nick, the last time you were with us was State of the Planet, and that was December 10th. We already knew about the orange turd, but we did not see well, okay. We knew about Project 2025, but did any of us really think it was going to be a tsunami of events like this? And that's why you're here to talk about these services, these public services, FEMA, NOAA, NWS, Social Security, the intersections from your point of view, because you're studying a field in disaster management, in helping people. And now everything's like a rug just pulled out under you. Wow. Welcome to our nightmare, I guess.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's definitely been a crazy couple of months watching the Trump administration. Um my background is in meteorology and now emergency management, seeing both of these fields being under a direct attack in the federal government has been something truly crazy to witness. Basically all of these things that are meant to be of service to all people in the country, to all citizens and
Yeah.
non-citizens alike, and anyone that's residing in the country is being directly attacked. So it's hard to,
Directly. Directly.
yeah,
It is.
yeah.
So where are we in the intersection? Start us out because, maybe I don't know. I'm sure a lot of our followers know about these different
Agencies,
agencies,
yeah,
but
yeah,
why don't you go over everything in the intersection for us?
yeah. Um, the National Weather Service and FEMA, and all these agencies have goals, missions to help protect life, property, the environment, and help people in disasters. And so, I think the maybe the best thing I could do is like talk about both these agencies, a little bit of their history, like why do they exist in the first place, and their
Yeah,
history and background, and then it'll help us maybe understand why they're under attack right now.
great.
Um, or
I'd
maybe we
like to
won't
know.
understand,
I would
or
like
maybe
to
we won't
know.
understand. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, so maybe I could start by talking about the National Weather Service. Um, so
Okay.
a lot of people may not know this, but the Weather Service has been around in some capacity since 1870. So it's been around a long
It is a
time.
long time. Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, it was created, or its ancestor was created from a joint resolution of Congress in 1870 and signed into law by Ulysses S. Grant, President Grant, in 1870, and it was administered by the U.S. Army Signal Service.
Signal.
So
The
yeah,
word of the week.
yeah. So it's basically under the control of the Department of War, which is now the Department of Defense. It's the same department.
Right.
Um, so it was under ministered by the military. So the military collected, the army collected the meteorological data from different parts of the country and started creating weather maps and stuff like that. Um, and then in 1891, um, the the um, the service was moved to civilian control under the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it became the U.S. Weather
Oh.
Bureau.
Oh.
And it, yeah, and
That's
that's
pretty
the name that
interesting. Humble
yeah, and that's the name that
beginnings.
it had.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was under the U.S. Department of Agriculture until 1940, and then it was transferred again to the Department of Commerce, which it remains under today, the Department of Commerce. And so, I mean,
Oh,
you can tell already that how the Weather Service serves all of these purposes. Understanding weather data has important implications for defense of the country, for agriculture, for commerce. All of these important things.
therefore, why it's under commerce? Is that,
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah,
Who is now
yeah,
headed by Howard Lutnick? Oh, God.
yeah,
Who I am now calling one of the horsemen of the apocalypse after his statement about the Social Security checks. I'm sure everybody heard. He made a comment about his
yes,
94-year-old
yeah,
mother-in-law. Oh, if she doesn't get her check, she's not a thief. She's not going to complain. Oh my gosh. Sorry, Nick. I couldn't help myself. I digress.
yeah, yeah. You're good. Yeah, I heard about it too. It was ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
ridiculous.
but yeah. So and then the Weather Bureau became the National Weather Service formally in 1970, when it was put under the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So it's been known as the National Weather Service since the 1970s. So I mean, basically the purpose of the Weather Service is to protect life, property, and the environment.
Hmm.
That's their primary mission. So everything that they do revolves around that mission. And it's a very, if you think about emergency management, the phases of emergency management, the response phase of emergency management involves the actions taken to immediately prior, during, or following a hazard event to protect life and
Right.
property and the environment. So the Weather Service has a very response driven um, mission,
Hmm.
and
Which we need.
so, huh?
Which we need desperately.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Mm.
And so, uh, and so, the 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 Weather Service has all of these different aspects to it involve around that mission, and so there's 122 weather forecast offices scattered throughout the country. So I mean, from Grand Forks, North Dakota, which is about an hour north of here, where I interned as a social scientist a couple years ago, to offices in Alaska, like Fairbanks, Alaska, Anchorage, to even American Samoa in the South
Wow.
Pacific. Yeah, so they're all over the place, and so there's 122 WFOs. There's regional headquarters that serve those WFOs, and then there's national offices like the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, and the Weather Prediction Center, which deals with a lot of hydrological issues, and in Maryland.
Oh,
So They're based in Maryland, so where the headquarters for the Weather Service actually is too, in Silver Spring, Maryland. And so the Weather Service is responsible for all
A
of the
lot.
meteorological warnings, advisories, watches in the United States that are meant to inform people of dangerous or hazardous, potentially hazardous or impactful weather. And what's impactful, can be
Mm-hmm.
different for different industries and in organizations. So fog could be impactful for
Yeah.
somebody, let alone a tornado. You know,
And we're watching, we see it in real time. We see all of it when it's happening now with storm chasers and meteorologists and internet. We see it in real time. We need this information. It's just,
yeah, yeah, and I mean, and so understanding the weather service and all that, all those capabilities,
mm-hmm.
you now have to think about what happens if you take away those capabilities, you know, and so gutting the weather service, which is what's been happening. A lot of people have been terminated. They tried to bring back some meteorologists that were previously terminated because they realized they were too
Right.
important right now
Yeah.
for hazardous
Mm.
weather events. Um, but taking away those services means taking away a public safety function.
There you go.
The Weather Service has a public safety function. They work with emergency managers and police and fire departments. During hazardous weather.
Which is
Um,
like everywhere
and
all the time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
I mean, that's one of the things one of my results for my dissertation actually was this discussion of core partners.
Mm-hmm.
The those that are responsible for public safety. Um, like emergency managers and police and fire, and even military. Coast Guard or whatever. Um, those are core partners for the Weather Service, and the Weather Service itself is serving a public safety function by directly issuing warnings to the public. And so,
I
this
get them.
idea,
I get
mhm,
them. I get them on my phone.
yeah,
You could, most people do, I think, or use them.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And then so, you know, the beef that Trump and the far right have with NOAA and the Weather Service is basically two issues. First, they don't believe in the science of climate change, which is the antithesis of NOAA, which accepts the science of climate change, communicates the science of climate change,
Mm-hmm.
and communicates data that backs up the science of climate change. So they want to get rid of NOAA because they don't want to they don't believe in the legitimacy of climate science. So I mean that's basically the beef they had in Project 2025. They specifically mentioned NOAA as a problem to that to over the climate agenda, so called.
Yeah.
And
So that's the.
yeah,
It's so ignorant. I can't.
yeah,
I don't know, Nick. It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, and then the Weather Service specifically, their beef is with public forecasting service that's free and accessible in the public domain to everyone. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want that kind of equity, that kind of utility. They want to privatize weather services. And this is not something you see much in the rest of the world. Like you go to the Meteorological Service of Canada, the Met Office of the UK, the Meteorological Service of Mexico, the Meteorological Service of Fiji. Most countries have a government
Mm-hmm.
run weather service because weather matters for everybody. I mean, whether it's finding what clothes to put on as an individual, or your drive to work, to agriculture, to commerce, to
I don't think
military
people they
needs.
don't
You know,
understand. They don't
yeah,
people the at least MAGA doesn't understand.
yeah,
I went on Twitter today for the first time in a while and I see these threads. These people are cheering all this shit on and don't even or they're fake. whatever.
Yeah,
It's wild, wild. Cheering it on. Something that we've lived with all of our lives and are used to and
it
need.
works.
It
Yeah, it
works.
works. Yeah, and it works with the budget that they have too. Like I think the budget for the weather service is and I think might be a couple $1 billion compared to what 800 billion for like the military industrial complex.
Yeah.
you know, I
Them.
mean,
Yeah. I
think of,
know.
imagine the kind of money that could go into forecasting the weather. That would be so great for the economy and for everything. And but what they have
Hmm.
is still extremely helpful,
Yeah.
in terms of protecting life, property, and the environment, and fostering economic, growth for all the issues that
Oh.
economic, you know,
Yeah. Or
and
at
that's what
least,
it does.
well, at
It
least
does that too.
stability. Stability. I
Stability,
would say more
economic stability.
stability than growth because
Yeah,
we have to know what's happening to have stability.
yeah,
And
exactly.
not that, not I don't know about the growth part. We'll have to look at that further.
Yeah, I know. But a politician would argue that
Yeah,
economic
true.
growth, because government's
True.
killing
That's all
growth.
they talk about.
Yeah,
Stock
but
market
yeah, I
crashed
mean,
today. It did.
figures. Yeah. Yeah. Trump talks and it crashes.
Jeez. Oh, happy
Yeah.
Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the weather service is an important service, and to privatize it would mean paywalls,
Yeah, like
paywalls, so
everything
money.
else. Our whole lives are
Yeah.
paywalled. Now the best things are going to be paywalled.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't really function as a country if you have your weather services paywalled, because not everyone can afford the
No,
service. It's just
no.
inevitable. And so it serves a social function to have a weather service that's nationalized and can work for everybody.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
nationalization is not a dirty word. It's not. I wish they would do it with more instead of going the other way, like Medicare, nationalize health, and they're taking it away.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Oh,
My son is in the
I hear
background.
him. Tell him we
Yeah,
said hi. Does he want to come and say
yeah,
hi? Does he want to be the
yeah.
star? Hey, how are you? He's really growing. He's really growing up. Little, he's going to be Bruce is going to be a little meteorologist. Well, he's
Yeah, he
got,
likes.
it's his future we're talking about here. I mean, you're still young.
Yeah,
You're still young. So it's his future.
yeah,
And this is really what you're looking after.
yeah, yeah. The as climate change worsens, we're already seeing climate disasters right now. Fires in the Carolinas, major
Yes.
flooding after drought in South Texas.
Yep.
The year's just started and it's already
Yeah.
chaos.
Yeah. Chaos,
You know,
but the media doesn't cover it as much as it should at all. People don't know what's going on.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and maybe that is from cutbacks. Maybe that is. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, and those that it just shows the value of the weather service even more. When you see these things happening,
Yep.
and before the cuts, there was already a staffing issues at weather service offices. Even when we did interviews for my dissertation, I noticed some offices had a lot of meteorologists and some had very comparatively fewer meteorologists, and some of the meteorologists I talked to, in interviews, talked about staffing being an issue sometimes, but now it's a big issue. It's degrading upper air observations. There are some sites, some offices that can't do two observations a day. They have to go down to one, or they have none anymore.
Wow.
Where they had two, they have none because they don't have the staff to manage the weather balloon
Unreal.
launches. These are
Unreal.
manually launched by people, and they
Yeah.
can't do them because they don't have the staff for them. So
So, how's the intersection with the National Weather Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association?
yeah, so
What's going to
NWS
happen?
is under yeah NWS is under NOAA,
Yeah.
and NOAA does wider climate, weather, and water
They hate
services.
Noah.
Yeah, they hate NOAA. Yeah, yeah, because of climate stuff, and it's so NWS is being damaged, and NOAA is being damaged
Mm,
and gutted
yeah.
because of climate issues. It's just you think we've known about the science of climate change. I mean, climate change has been known in some capacity in the scientific community for decades, many
Decades.
decades.
Sure.
Decades before I was born, like before World War II, there were
Well, yeah,
scientists that
what
were talking about the issue of carbon dioxide in the
the
atmosphere,
greenhouse
you know,
effect.
the greenhouse
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
Um,
Didn't do
but
anything about
and
it.
then, yeah, but I mean, it's obviously been more general public news since the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but um, you would think after a period of legitimate discussion on the issue of climate change, we would get past this skepticism and deal with the issue in
You
a
would
real
think.
way. But
Sure.
the at least a decent um, group of people in this country that have the power to vote and vote in people that don't accept the science of climate change
Sure.
are still here, and it's like a whiplash effect where you have the climate change getting worse, but yet
Right.
the dragging of the feet is getting worse too.
Well,
And you have
they're
now a president in power that is more interested in helping oil companies
mm-hmm.
make more money.
Yeah, and they're proselytizing in the churches about this stuff. There's no separation of church and state, and I see what they're saying. I've been watching certain things. There was something going on around one of the churches here, and it was broadcast on YouTube, he was supposedly some kind of veteran or national security guy, completely blowing off, talking negatively about the climate changing. It was insane.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, that
farmers
is.
around here. Yeah. But
Yeah,
it was on YouTube. It was,
yeah, and I mean it's a weird issue for because you have farmers that are like politically conservative, but yet they see the effects of climate change,
absolutely.
climate chaos, but they it's like cognitive dissonance for them.
Well, because
you know,
we know why. I mean, they watch certain networks and they get their brain. They have the mind virus. I feel
yeah,
people that are
yeah,
brainwashed, misinformation, disinformation, following all these crazy accounts and not understanding it's very anti-science swing here.
yeah,
So
yeah. It
what do
is.
you see for the NOAA?
Um, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll talk about FEMA here in a minute. FEMA's path seems pretty dire. I don't know what's going to happen with NOAA and the Weather
Easy.
Service because
Right.
um,
The
there's a lot
military.
of there are
Yeah.
politicians that are politically conservative Republicans that may not want to see the destruction of NOAA and the destruction of the Weather Service, the National Weather Service. They may not,
Okay.
because they know that it could have a very negative impact on them.
Well,
uh,
one can only
on their
hope.
constituents. Yeah. On the other hand, I don't know if they have the political clout or the courage to speak up, and
Mm,
so they may allow Trump to gut the Weather Service completely.
completely.
And in which case we would be in big trouble. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, I mean, this is, and I mean, all of this is like the NOAA,
It's
NWS, FEMA, and you can talk about the Department of Education, you can talk about the Social Security Administration. All of these things are revolving around this ideological philosophy of gut governments, federal government helping people. Gut
right.
everything that's helping people
And
in
rugged
some way.
individualism. Everybody
Yeah,
helps
yeah.
themselves. Pull yourself up by the bootstrap
Your
and,
bootstraps, right,
yeah,
right,
but you
yeah,
have
and
to be
so
a certain complexion which looks more like mine.
yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's pretty
Yeah,
bad.
and they're not going to get rid of the military industrial complex. They're not going to get rid of the Justice Department's power. To go after people. They're not going to get rid of immigration customs enforcement.
God
They're not
no.
getting rid of those agencies. They're going to get rid of
Anything that helps
NOAA,
us.
NWS.
Yeah. Well, do you
Yeah,
really think that Social Security is? I have my finger on the pulse of Social Security, and there's a lot of people don't think it's going to be totally smashed. But by the time you're in your career, you get social, you won't, there won't be Social Security. It's going to be a completely perverted, privatized thing if it keeps going this way. But that
yeah,
is, you know, you were talking about the intersection of these things because they're for us, for the people.
yeah. I mean, I mean, I mean, we could talk about what the world's going to look like in 25 years. Because
Yeah,
I'm 25 years away from
I know.
potentially getting Social Security. So
We have to think about today.
yeah, but if we assume the world won't be on fire in 25 years, or drowning or whatever global disaster, um, what would Social Security look like? If these people in power maintain their power throughout that period, then it could look like something that's privatized and
Sure.
shelved
And
itself.
there
Something else.
probably will never be a retirement age since we see in Congress and Senate that 122. What is that? The retirement age? No,
Yeah,
90. Sorry, ageism. But I mean, I could see getting rid of retirement age and never having it. you know,
yeah,
you're on your
yeah,
own, people, just like you're on your own. So you'll be on your own for storms and states. You think the states can handle what's happening and what's coming?
yeah. It's all about reverting to this past that they think was so great, where
Yeah.
we're
When
really, there was a time when Social Security didn't exist. What was that like? For a lot
Well,
of people,
the
it
population
was,
was how big
it was
then? It was
yeah,
I mean, my grandfather was getting Social Security in my life, and he right now would, if he was alive, he would probably be 125. But he's still,
yeah,
but Doge has not found out. Oh, they haven't, they
yeah,
haven't
right,
found out that he's still getting Social Security.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
he's not. Jeez.
yeah. I know. Um, but yeah, I could talk a little bit about FEMA since we're kind of dancing around FEMA
Yeah. Let's dance
stuff.
around FEMA.
Yeah,
I want to
so
hear.
the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Um, so their mission is obviously revolves around emergency management. So that's the name
Yes.
of the agency. It's to help people before, during, and after disasters. That's basically the goal in it. And the FEMA's creation, which was under um, President Carter in 1979, was sort of a culmination of growing federal involvement in disasters over decades. Because in the 19th century into the mid 20th century, um, federal involvement in disasters was what they call ad hoc. So ad hoc is Latin for this. For
Hmm.
this disaster,
Right.
we'll give money or federal aid, or for that disaster we won't. For this one we will. So it was very patchwork when they would decide to give aid, and it might be based on something as simple as media coverage. A big disaster happens in, say, a big city, or like San Francisco earthquake or whatever in
Right.
early 20th century, or
Oh
the
my God.
Galveston hurricane in 1900, or the Dust Bowl event, which was, happened in a much more lower population part of the world, part of the country, but it had a huge impact
Huge.
on the country. Um, the government would provide aid, but other low attention disasters might not get as much attention, and so, you know as especially particularly after the Dust Bowl, the federal government saw itself as needing to have more consistent involvement in disasters that might overwhelm a locality or a state. And so you had, legislation that came up, that would, like for like flood disasters, or managing floods. You had the Army Corps Engineers,
Yeah.
legislation for that. You had the Federal Disaster Relief Act of 1950, which started to govern more aid for disasters. Um, and You had the rise of civil defense in the United States in the 50s and 60s in a response to the Cold War and potential nuclear attacks. So you had the federal government sort of having more involvement with states and localities on things of that nature. And so by the 70s, there was more of an interest in involving all hazards, planning for all hazards. So not just nuclear war, which
Right.
was basically the focus of civil defense warfare, but also for natural hazard agents and technological disasters. And so the reorganization of various administrations that dealt with different lines of emergency management relief and issues in the 1970s, that was organized into the FEMA by Carter, was
Yeah, I
basically
remember.
to have a more unified and consistent response to disasters by the federal government, and working with states and localities that were overwhelmed by disasters. And you had since then you've had various legislation that's been in place. The Stafford Act of 1988 governs,
I remember that.
authorizes FEMA to act with relief and in disaster relief and recovery activities when the president declares a emergency or major disaster declaration. And
And for the
basically,
most part, they've been successful. I mean, I know that
yeah,
Katrina was the big news event where that's where the first criticism I remember really ever hearing. But other
yeah,
than that, and then of course that was media fueled and it was
yeah.
a
I mean,
racist fueled. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, FEMA is, I think, largely been successful. I mean, they get criticized because they're the top. They're at the top, and
Right.
so they can get criticized. It's easy to criticize FEMA. I mean, they were criticized after Hurricane Andrew. Um, Katrina was obviously, the criticism for Katrina was more legit, because
Mhm.
there were issues with their ability to respond, because in 2003 they were absorbed by the new Department of Homeland Security. So they were
Ah.
absorbed into the DHS, and so their all hazards approach to disasters, where they plan for all kinds of reasonable hazard events, went away, and they subsumed by terrorism. Everyone was all freaked out about
Yeah, I know.
terrorism.
I lived through
Yeah,
it too.
yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
9/11, right?
Mhm.
That was a major focusing event for emergency management and the rise of the Homeland Security state.
Yep,
And
which
so,
is now really crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Out of
And then,
control.
and so to deal with that, the post Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act of 2006 was passed, that made FEMA a autonomous agency in DHS. It's still
Okay.
part of DHS, but
Mhm.
it has its own distinct mission that was refocused on the all hazards approach where they don't just focus on terrorism, they focus
Right.
on everything
And
and
how about
doing
budgetarily?
credit.
Are they under the budget line of Department of Homeland Security, or do they have a separate? Well, no, if they're under the,
I
they have their own
that I'm
budget.
not sure.
Well, if they want to
I
cut
think
it,
it's under DHS because
yeah.
the head of FEMA reports to DHS
Okay.
secretary and
All
all of
right.
that. So
So when
yeah,
Doge is looking at the budget and saying this is where we're cutting, they're just probably going right on a spreadsheet and just eliminating. And then there's dollars they see. Oh boy, we're going to have all this money. They're crazy.
yeah.
Why are we even
And
paying federal taxes? There's going to be a revolt.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So like, FEMA, the NWS, NOAA, all these
Yeah.
agencies are authorized by Congress,
Mhm.
so the executive branch can't formally eliminate them. So when Kristi Noem, who, the former governor of South Dakota, she was actually my congresswoman when I lived in South Dakota some years,
Sorry.
like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
boy, poor
yeah,
you.
which is kind of ironic. She would visit the National Weather Service office in Sioux Falls and be all, yeah, pro weather service, and now it's going to be gutted.
Oh my gosh.
you know,
Oh, she's
when she
moved on.
says,
She's moved on
yeah,
to Nazi
to bigger and brighter
Gestapo
things,
job.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Standing in front of illegally detained
Yeah,
people from
I
other
just saw
countries.
that
It was
picture.
horrible.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
there's a video of her.
yeah,
It's like psychopathic.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
But when she says that they're going to eliminate FEMA, try to
Mhm.
eliminate FEMA by like the October 1st, I think they gave a date for it or something. Basically, they are trying to functionally eliminate it by gutting the staff.
Yeah,
You
that's
cut the
how they're
staff,
doing it all. Right.
all of the
Mhm.
the FEMA will still technically exist. All of the lines of relief and relief aid and everything else that they have that FEMA could dole out to people in
Mhm.
disasters, all
Mhm.
that stuff will still technically exist. The money that goes into those things will
Right.
still be going into those things, but none of it will get spent because the staff will be gone. It's like US aid. US aid is
Oh,
effectively
okay.
shut down, even though it still exists
So
statutorily.
Congress will still appropriate funds for FEMA but there's nobody there. It doesn't
Right.
but I don't
It
understand
doesn't
the
make
thing.
sense, does it?
No, it does not. So they're trying to
Yeah.
save all this money. So
But
they're going to appropriate the money because they have to have a justification for collecting federal taxes for these
yeah,
programs,
probably. I mean,
even
it
though
could
the
come a point.
government, but the government doesn't necessarily need our taxes to fund all this stuff.
Yeah.
They don't.
I
They
mean, it
just
could come a point if the Republicans remain in control of the House and Senate, where they
yeah.
would basically say, well, President Trump has effectively shut down these agencies. We might as well make it official, and then it would be official. They would put in legislation that would officially
Wow.
demolish FEMA and NOAA and NWS. But I
The
mean,
same week as a horrible hurricane hits Florida.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's
Little Ronnie White
it
Boots will be screaming.
yeah. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever in terms of like,
Oh,
um,
no.
yeah, because I mean, FEMA does a lot. I mean, they do things throughout the disaster cycle. I mean, they issue preparedness grants to jurisdictions to help them with their capabilities to prepare for disasters. They obviously do response operations. They have rapid response teams. They have people available in EOCs, the emergency operations centers, during disasters because FEMA has different regions. They have 10 regions geographic regions that they've delineated, like North Dakota's in FEMA Region 8. Um, I think New York is in Region 9 or something. So
Yeah.
they have these different regions.
Yeah.
They manage the National Flood Insurance Program, which, by the way, Project 2025 wanted to get rid of and privatize as well. Privatize flood insurance.
All of it.
Yeah, so I mean, they work with not only state and local jurisdictions in within the United States, but they also work with the hundreds of federally recognized tribes.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
and work
Mhm.
with them. And I mean, there was recent legislation. I think as recently as 2017. I think it was after some of the severe weather that happened and hurricanes that happened those years. They made it so that federally recognized tribes can directly request the president for a emergency or major disaster declaration instead of having to go through other channels to do that. So there's all sorts of things that have been done to try to reform the process and make the process easier, because that's a concern a lot of people have about reforming FEMA,
Mhm.
not abandoning it
Right.
completely.
Well,
And
you see,
you
there's
know,
always ways to audit things properly and it's called reorganization without
yeah,
having to slash the whole workforce. I mean, reorganizations happen in business all the time. They do. I've reorged business in projects when I was in sponsor programs. We reorged projects. We had to. So those, but not the way it's happening this way. I mean, there's probably administrative things that could be done differently and a lot of things, but not abandoning like you're saying.
yeah. I mean, what they're doing in the government in the name of efficiency is about trying to dismantle the federal government's presence in
Right.
these things.
Right.
Again, they
Right.
want to,
Right.
you know, NWS, they want to privatize forecasting services. They want to basically make the NWS a data collection service. They want to
Mm.
maintain data collection, but they want to privatize the
Oh,
forecast.
really?
Yeah, that at
Really?
least if you follow the Project 2025 document, they
Yeah.
talked about.
Okay.
So maintain data collection because the
Control.
had control and gathering of information in a uniform process, but then give it to private industry to do
Right.
all the work
Right.
and take all the work and privatize and monetize it. And then NOAA, they just
And
want to completely do away
politicize
with
it.
politicize it, yeah. And
Absolutely. It's
then and
propaganda.
then and then NOAA, they just want to be done with NOAA,
Wow.
as an administration. And then
Jeez.
FEMA, basically the president signed an executive order last week that basically said that he wants, assuming this is Trump's word, he wants to lead, he wants um, emergency management to basically be at the local and state level. And it's in the name of local and state control. Emergency
Mhm.
management is already heavily locally led.
Yeah.
The federal government is not an overseer. It's an extra layer of support, so that you no matter where you are across the country, if there's a disaster that overwhelms the locality or state, there's an opportunity for extra help.
With FEMA.
You know,
They work
yeah.
together with the locals.
With FEMA, so you
Right.
don't have again this ad hoc
Mhm.
behavior of the government where it just picks and chooses where it gives
Okay.
aid. I
Right.
mean, you already. I mean, the disaster declarations already, you know, can be potentially politicized. Where a president can choose to give aid to one place and not another, but it's a little harder to do when you have federal money, taxpayer pay for money going into that system, that federal system that's
Mhm.
supposed to be for everybody, accessible to everybody who needs it. You
So
know,
the
whereas
orange,
if you get rid of the federal
yeah,
process completely, then it's up to Congress to put up a legislation to
okay.
give aid to a specific place, and it might be based totally on politics or media coverage or
Oh my
something
god.
else. So it's a big difference. And again, if nobody's there to provide the aid, then
Right.
it's just a functionally gutted, functionally extinct agency,
Now
that can't do anything.
you're from Nebraska before, And I'm just wondering how people in Nebraska are feeling who are prone to tornadoes and the tornado alley, which is actually moving towards me in Western New York. We get tornado warnings now and all that.
Hmm.
Do you have your finger on the pulse of any of the people from where you are?
Well, not really. I mean, I keep track of the news in Nebraska since I lived there so long. I'm originally from Seattle, but I lived in Nebraska for like a decade.
Right, right.
um, I know the one of the representatives there is very concerned. Congressman is there is
Okay.
very concerned about the. I think he's a Republican too. Is concerned about the loss of the upper air observations out of Omaha's
Oh,
weather forecast office. They completely stopped upper air observations weather balloons because of staffing
yeah.
issues.
So
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
what does that do to let's say there's going to be a tornado and what's now missing?
so I
Is it
mean, basically, so the way modern forecasting works, is you have numerical models that approximate give approximate answers to meteorological equations that are programmed into the computer models.
all right.
But all that the data that goes into those models is data from surface and upper air observations and oceanic observations, everything that environmental,
Mhm.
from soil temperatures, air temperatures, upper air temperatures, moisture, everything, water temperatures, all that goes into the models, and then the models calculate the initial state of the atmosphere and then
Wow.
project it out into the future, up to, a couple weeks in advance, but it's more reliable in the first 7 to 10 days. If you lose
Mm.
observations, either
Wow.
either decrease or eliminate observations, that can potentially make the models less accurate, because then the models have to try to approximate the missing data. And so every little bit of error that goes into the model, from missing observations or whatever, gets magnified as the model projects out
Oh,
into the future. So I
right.
mean, yeah, so basically it can degrade the forecast. That's forecast degradation,
Oh.
you know so I mean,
Hmm.
that's the issue, because models are not perfect as it is. I mean, they're just
Right.
not. There's no such thing as a perfect forecast because of chaos theory. There's um, there's errors based on what they call truncation error, which is rounding errors,
Mhm.
basically,
Yeah, but it's a
where you
lot
have,
better to have models than have
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
I mean,
And
we're going,
so
but what are we going back to? Graph paper and pencil? Jeez.
yeah, I know. And then,
Ugh.
so there's errors based on rounding errors. There's errors based on just chaos. The atmosphere is a
Mhm.
fluid. And then there's errors based on observational errors, and
Wow.
missing observations will count as an error. And so
Okay.
that will compound in the forecast. Every step into the future you take, every hour to day to 2 days to 5 days out, it'll degrade the forecast. So you could have a forecast for a severe weather event that's over forecast. Maybe
Mhm.
it turns out not to be as bad as it was going to be, or it might end up being worse than was expected,
Right.
which is bad because
It's
you're
bad.
trying to plan for a severe weather event where you think there's going to be could be isolated tornadoes, and then you end up with a tornado outbreak that
Which
wasn't
is
quite
happening a lot
predicted.
more lately, or I'm
Yeah,
seeing it more. I mean, you used to be a
yeah,
storm chaser. Yeah,
yeah,
you did.
yeah. I mean, luckily, like Washington State was under a severe thunderstorm watch a few days ago for
Yeah, I saw you
severe
posted.
weather that was expected. They were expecting isolated tornadoes, large, giant hailstones of like 2 or 3 inches in diameter and stuff like that. None of that happened. That was over forecast.
Okay. But
relative
people
to
were
the
ready in case it
people were
did.
ready in
And
case
that's
it
what
had.
I want to be here. I mean,
Yeah,
tornado hit me in 17. It can happen again. It's happening.
yeah,
The atmosphere, we already had a terrible thunder and windstorm that knocked trees down on my place.
yeah,
And my on my deck, my green stalk, which was it's a tower garden, which was affixed to the thing. I mean, it was like unreal. I've had to have the trees cut up.
yeah,
Seriously. Yeah.
yeah. And so, the model. Computer
I
modeling
want
has
those
been.
models.
Yeah, computer modeling has been in place since the early 1950s. That was when the
Yes.
first models were created. They attempted. There's a famous meteorologist named Richardson. He in the 1920s actually organized a attempt to use weather equations, have a bunch of humans forecast the weather using numerical equations,
Right. Right.
and it actually created a very primitive numerical weather prediction forecast for like a day in the future. It was horribly off
But
because
it
it was
was
so,
born. That was
but it
when it
was
was
but it
born.
was an attempt to use numerical modeling
Yeah.
instead of other means to forecast the
Like,
weather.
oh, what's
Um,
going on over that mountain? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
literally what it
Uh-huh.
was. Like, what, it was downstream, upstream forecasting. So basically, what's happening hundreds of miles away, what is that going to be when it gets here? So
Mm.
the changes in the weather based on what was going on upstream. And so that's basically what forecasting was back in those days. But it was hard to do in like mountainous
and
terrain
and
and
there
things like
weren't
that.
8 billion people, 335 or 4 million. I mean, how many people are in the United States? 335 million. Yeah.
335 million, like
So,
that. Yeah,
and all
yeah,
of these cities and it's insane. Everything built.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, you
tornadoes
need
used to
much
hit
more reliable
farms.
service to forecast the weather now, and so we have numerical weather prediction now, and that's
Crazy.
the foundation of forecasting. But it's only as good as the data that goes into
And
it.
it's only as good as the people that they have working there, which they're
Working,
not going to have.
yeah,
So
exactly.
bye half of the
Yeah, because
shit.
you need somebody to put the
Wow.
data in,
God
assimilate the
damn.
data, and interpret the data. That's the biggest thing. Forecasting
Yeah.
is not just a computer thing. You need people to actually interpret what was being seen, because you
Yeah.
have two models that give you two slightly different stories. Well, which one's correct? That
Right.
depends on a human to be able to interpret it.
So we're not asking AI yet. That could be a whole other show.
Oh
But
yeah,
we're not
yeah,
going there. But that's what
yeah.
I can see that with the thinking, with
Mhm.
the dope in the White House who knows nothing and says, "Oh, it's Elon the genius will build it."
Yeah,
They're going to renovate in 6 months. They say they're going to renovate the entire Social Security database and get rid of the COBOL, and they're going to migrate all that data in 6 months. Now, I had a huge migration project to an Oracle project when I was a subject matter expert, but I was in payroll. And this was
yeah.
SUNY wide, State University of New York wide, right?
New York,
It
yeah,
was more than 6 months. I'm sorry. It's just insane. How are these people going to do this in 6 months? I don't know. I just feel uncomfortable. But maybe it's different. Back when I was doing it, we didn't have as much automation. Although the
yeah,
program that we built for Oracle from Oracle Corporation, I didn't make that decision, but we built a very powerful program.
yeah,
But this is what they're
yeah,
going to do in 6 months in Social Security, they say. 6 months.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to be
Could be
positive about
a
it.
mess
Well, I
potentially.
feel like because didn't Elon do the same thing when he took over Twitter and there was all kinds of problems? You cannot have those kind of problems from X to a Social Security, which is people's lives.
Lives,
Like
yeah,
me. Yeah, people's lives. And that's what
yeah,
we're going back. We're circling back to the beginning when that's what you wanted to talk about,
yeah, yeah,
the effect on
yeah.
people. And I think it's also environmental racism too. They don't want
Yeah.
to get to those areas. They don't care. This administration, these people, they don't
Yeah.
care. They don't
Yeah. I
care.
mean, a lot of the emergency management professionals were mentioning the fact that after that executive order came out, because there's like on the International Association of Emergency Managers, the IAEM, there's like a message board that I can go to for people where people emergency management professionals can talk amongst themselves about policy and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
a lot of people were mentioning, well, they didn't even mention the federally recognized tribes. Well, they probably don't exist in the mind of Trump.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah, they mention states and localities, but they don't mention, the tribes, and it's like, well, probably don't care about the tribes. They probably don't have any relationship. Oh, don't ask Chris,
No.
about your
No, they
relationship with tribes,
right.
by the way. I don't know if you
No,
know the
they're
story.
I she's not even allowed on the on the
Yeah.
yeah, they're yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
here I would say New York probably has a better relationship because of business. There's a lot of business. The Senecas
Yeah.
have the casinos and hotels, and there's a lot of business. So that
Yeah. It's like
is
that in
where,
Washington State where I'm
but
from,
how
too.
can, but this administration can, I mean, Trump looked at that as competition back in the day when he had casinos. And
Yeah.
they were trying to stop that movement from taking place and being strong for indigenous people to have businesses. So
Yeah.
there's other reasons too for ignoring or forgetting them. I mean, we could go into all of these pathological reasons for wanting to get rid of these agencies.
Yeah. I mean, it's just Trump and those around him that are far smarter than him have beefs, that they axe to grind with, whether
Yeah,
it's,
I had a
you
question.
know,
I had something
mhm.
also I wanted to ask you that who wrote it? It was a good one. Oh, okay. Karen, do Yarvin, Thiel, Musk, do they all really believe they can survive climate change? What do you think, Nick? All of the,
Probably, yeah.
do you
I mean,
think they believe it,
their
huh?
their their money is everything to them, and so they I think they really believe that I think Musk really believes he can go to Mars, which is like I mean, I love Mars as a planet. It's a pretty planet, but it's a incredibly hostile place to live.
Well,
It's pretty to look at on a picture of a robot
yeah, I
looking
hear
at
you. You know what I read today? I read that Russia has offered Musk nuclear generators, small nuclear power for his excursions to Mars. So I'm
them. Oh,
thinking,
really?
I'm reading this, I'm thinking, okay, Elon, move to Russia. Go fix them.
Yeah,
Leave the
yeah,
United States. Maybe there's a little hope to get rid of Elon if the Russians
yeah,
are
maybe.
off. I mean, but it's like craziness. I read that today. I don't have the article, but all right. I have to say, I want to go around from your whole the major point in the intersection of all these programs because we're going on an hour and we're probably going to wrap up. So let's have and maybe a couple of questions and we'll wrap it up as
Okay.
far as the put it together for us. Hit the home run.
Exactly. Um, well, I mean, as far as the the common theme, whether it's NWS, NOAA,
Mm-hmm.
um, and FEMA, and I mean, other agencies that Department of Education, Social Security Administration, all these things, U.S. aid, agencies and departments, is to basically get rid of things that help people. I
That's
mean that's really the
really
biggest
interesting.
theme. They're getting rid of everything that they see as wasteful, and for them, waste
Is
these
us.
plants
I'm waste.
is
Yeah.
is waste. Yeah,
Yeah, we're
yeah.
waste. We're
Yeah.
waste. That's pretty
I mean,
sad. Hmm.
and I mean it
The
to get
taxpayers.
rid of to get rid of the NWS and to get rid of FEMA in particular, maybe, is
Yeah.
to create a United States that is of greater inequity, than it is already. I mean, there's already issues with trying to get disaster aid or warnings with weather service to people that need them,
Mm.
to everybody equally, um, and deal with issues of differences in resources, differences in access to information, things like that. This will getting rid of these federal agencies will only increase that, because you know for like disaster response and recovery, um, you might have for the same kind of disaster, you might have New York City, or Los Angeles or Chicago might be able to
Mhm.
respond a lot better than say Fargo,
There you go.
or
Yeah. It'll be
Lincoln,
completely
Nebraska.
there's gonna be no equity at
Yeah,
all. And
yeah, and so
poor cities,
yeah, and then
low.
there's and there was yeah, and their respective states too, will have
Yeah.
trouble
Mm.
responding,
Mm, mm, mm,
in
mm.
doing recovery. I mean, if you get rid of FEMA, some states might rise to the occasion, and put more money, more
Well, New York
resources,
will, and
more
they'll just
taxes.
tax us more.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so I mean, yeah, I mean that
All right.
might do that, but is Mississippi going to do that? Is
No.
Alabama going to do that? Is Nebraska going to do that? Even North Dakota, a lot of these red states that are staunchly anti, high taxes
The
on
states
anything.
that feed us, that need
Yeah,
these things. Okay.
yeah,
Tommyist, what is the relationship between the effectiveness of right wing propaganda and the likelihood of complete societal breakdown in the near term? Wow, there. You think you're up for that one? You're a doomer deep inside.
relationship between I mean, I can say that I think the climate change is causing, I think, a rise in right wing extremism in the world, in much of the world, especially the Western world, where you have this traditional left versus right,
Hmm.
dichotomy. Um, because what are right wingers obsessed with? They're obsessed with, with it's kind of a weird thing. They're obsessed with both individualism and control at the same time. It's
Yeah.
very weird. I mean, look at the federal government's collapse of the federal government right now. I mean, they don't want to have responsibility for people. They want people to be on their own, but yet they obsess with control. With the industrial complex, with the Justice Department, with immigration and customs enforcement, all these things to
Yeah.
control people,
Yeah.
intimidate people, so in a very authoritarian way. So it's they just don't want to help people. They want to control them.
Yeah.
They want people to help themselves and then control them in other ways. So it's very strange to see this. But I think, particularly the immigration stuff, that a lot of that
Oh my
is
God.
is a is climate change evolving.
Well, because
Most
they're
people may not
coming
link the
here.
two together,
No.
but people are moving a
Sure.
lot of times
Hmm.
because of issues of resource issues, and those resource issues are being caused by climate chaos. Food, loss of crops, water
You
supplies.
never hear that.
Yeah,
You hear all the criminals want to come here and take advantage and steal and all, and it's so
yeah,
simplistic and so ridiculous. All right,
yeah,
here's one. Right wing conglomerates have bought up most local TV and radio stations, so they are not likely to want to broadcast too much that is critical of Trump. Hi, Valdi. So that's another
yeah,
thing. They're afraid. They believe the bull because they right wing billionaires are buying this shit. So they're
yeah,
control. You're right about that. There's the control. There's the control.
yeah.
Okay, Do you think it's their complete hatred of climate change and climate denialism? They just want all conversations of climate shut down? Because I think it looks like even climate videos aren't even getting
Yeah,
shown
I
as
mean,
much as they were.
yeah, I mean, I mean, it's. I want to say Trump is a denier, but he might be a denier because he's not the most intelligent guy in the world. But those surrounding him, they probably know that climate change is real, but they deny it publicly.
Sure.
Because but yet they're doing things that suggest that they understand climate change
Buying
from a
Greenland.
geopolitical
Yeah.
standpoint. Greenland,
Yeah, because they
Canada,
know, well,
they
Greenland
want
is
to
go.
control the Arctic.
Yeah, they do.
Like Trump never says on TV says is how
National security.
hugely important Greenland is and why he
Ugh.
wants to go through all measures to take it over, but he never really says why.
Right.
What is so strategically important about Greenland? It's control of the Arctic,
Hmm.
the
And
warming,
Greenland will
thawing
be able to
Arctic.
grow food when we can't.
Yeah, and also
They know.
all the
Shit.
all the potential mined resources that you could get out of Greenland that will only increase as the ice sheet melts. So I mean,
Wow.
you know,
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
he just can't say it's because of climate change because he's publicly a denier. And he may actually believe in his denial, but some of the smarter people, like even Elon Musk, they probably know better.
Oh, he's got
Yeah,
to. I mean, he was the electric car guy, and he
yeah,
knows what's going on, but he's insane. He's lost
yeah,
his mind. He's insane.
yeah.
Nadia, thank you. Recall the immortal words of James G. Watt, Reagan's Secretary of Interior. Christo-fascist. When the last tree is felled, Christ will come back, and that's what the belief system is too. That's
Yeah,
driving away from science. So,
yeah. Basically, the world gets destroyed, and then the
elbow up.
Christ returns. Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
And let me see who else is here. I've got
yeah. I'll
a
get
couple
raptured, I
comments.
guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Jackie was
yeah,
saying she said Jackie is who volunteers for the Red Cross. I think
yeah,
weather is going to be a major driver. She does on the ground stuff. I mean, she's incredible. I think weather is going to be the major driver for the rest of our lives.
yeah, yeah. I think. I mean, it always has been in some ways, but it's going to. I mean, the extreme weather events are going to be very impactful on everybody. Whether it's so like again, South Texas right now going from drought to flood in an instant. I mean, some places got like 18 inches of rain in 48 hours. It was
Oh my
ridiculous.
gosh.
The
Crazy.
fires in the Carolinas, the tornadoes that have happened already this year,
Well,
and there'll be certainly more of them. So, yeah,
most of us will stay home and watch it. I mean,
yeah,
I'm not most of us. You know what I mean? People are not going to be able to. Well, nobody wants us to travel to their country anymore either, and nobody's
yeah,
coming here. So we're going to be isolated with or
yeah,
without these services. Without the services, we're going to look like a different country, I believe. And
yeah,
I'm trying to learn. I want to learn a little bit about Russia and their weather and forecasting and what they do for their citizens. So that's one of my interests because we're going
yeah.
to be living like Russia. So we'll
I
see.
mean, Russia
Good
has
scientists.
I believe they have a federal forecasting weather service just
They
like
do.
we do. Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
really? Tell
yeah, I
Trump
mean,
that.
yeah,
Tell the
yeah,
orange one that. Hey, you can't do
yeah.
this. Russia isn't even doing this. All right, I'm just fooling around. It's all right, everybody. Listen, I want to say thank you, and I put in the show notes Nicholas's Facebook page and his Patreon, and those links are in there. And okay, an autocracy is worth less than a democracy, and it's usually worth less and less every day. Umair.
Hmm.
Hey, 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 and Hi, Foggy. Capitalism and overpopulation doesn't work. Oh yeah, we definitely know that. I want to say hi to Elaine, and I want to say hello to T. Wigmore, Canadian friends that are from. I know them from the True North Eager Beaver show. I watch in the mornings, and I learn about Canada and what's going on up there. Solidarity with
Mhm.
Canada, and all right, Nicholas. Let's see. I'm just looking for any more. Listen, guys, we're gonna probably say good night. And everybody go over to the letter hack. He's got a guest, as always on Friday nights. He follows me. I do their Wednesday night show. That it's a
Mhm.
panel show. It's not climate. It's usually just fooling around and whatever happens. And I like it. And Matt's a very talented comic book artist, and they're learning from me. And hopefully, people will be watching this and understanding the intersection. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's been a good show to, I mean, actually, in preparation for the show, I looked up all this like history stuff because I know some of the history, particularly of FEMA, but the Weather Services has been around so much longer.
Yeah,
Such
it's
an old
fascinating.
agency. It's sad to see it under attack like this. With no understanding of like that it
Right.
serves a national purpose.
Well, then
For
we all
every.
have to get out. It's going to be summer in the East Coast, hit the streets. There are so many things planned. I think people are going to be on the streets all summer until they
Yeah.
crack down and bust everybody, and we all have to go to jail, and maybe it gets sent to El Salvador. All right. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to El Salvador. Sorry. Sorry. All right, everybody. Well, thank you, Nick, and
Mhm.
everybody for coming. I'm so glad. Um, Looney Tunes, thank you for moderating. Kim, thank you for moderating. All of you, thank you. And Nick will be back with State of the Planet. It's going to be Jennifer and Nick and Tony and Sandy. And we will do that probably sometime April or early May, I hope,
Yeah.
because there's going to be a lot to talk about. I know Jennifer's already ready doing her Arctic updates. So that's great. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Yeah.
Peace out. We get a little music and we get a little video action. And Nick, I wish you all the best. I do. You got a lot coming
Thank
up.
you.
He's got a lot coming up. Peace out, everybody. Thank you so
All right.
much.